We good? We're hot. Everything's on. It's amazing. I want to thank everybody. First, I want to thank the sponsors before I get to my guests. Head over to www.johnbartoloshow.com. Go check out a complete list of the sponsors there. I want to thank a few of them now. Gallo Technologies, Rhino Metals, Blackwater Ammunition, of course, Inforce Weapon Lights, Pulsar Thermal Imaging Technology. I want to give a special thanks out to Volquartsen, Kenzie's Optics, and of course, Galco Leather Holsters. There's a bunch more sponsors that are listed down below. Please thank them all. Go to the website, www.johnbartoloshow.com. Go check out a complete list there and thank them by buying something. Appreciate them. And please leave reviews and support the show and any comments. This is going to be a great one. I'm looking forward to this one. We got a legend in the studio. I haven't been this excited about a podcast in a minute because I love rapping about all the stuff, especially the old-time stuff. We got the man himself, Mr. Stitch Duran. What's going on?
Hey, man. I tell you, first of all, thanks for having me on. You know, I've been to a lot of studios, done a lot of interviews, but walking in, first of all, the hospitality is A-level.
Listen,
No, let me finish, man. Hold on. Walking in, your studio is just your office, your studio, the restrooms. It's like no other. So props to you, man. I'm looking forward to a good show, and ask any questions, and I'll give you some good answers.
Wow. Well, I got to hype you because this is probably one of the interviews in the last 100 that I've gotten the most excited for in so many ways because we can do a deep dive into a lot of stuff. And I want to get these stories down cold because this is some stuff that I've done a lot of personal research into, and I want to start and dive right in. How did you get into this business, first of all? Let's lay the groundwork for the people listening that maybe don't know. How did you get into the martial arts and fighting business?
Well, originally my goal was to become a baseball player.
Right. And, pull that mic up. Pull it close.
Yeah. My goal was to become a baseball player. Mm-hmm. And so, I played Little League, Pony League, all the way up. And come out of high school, I played 4 years varsity ball, third base. And so I walked on to Merced College, but Merced was 9 miles away from my town, and I didn't have a car. So I'd go to school with friends, and they would leave after school, and I'd stay in practice, and I'd have to thumb it back home, right? So 1972, I joined the military. I was in the Air Force. And I always told myself if I went to the Orient, I'd want to study the martial arts. Wow. That was the era of Bruce Lee. Right?
Of course.
So they sent me to a place called Thailand. I'm a young kid, that didn't even know what Thailand was.
Oh, that's the shit.
And I saw my first Muay Thai fight. There was friends that were there like 3 months before me, already stationed there. So they took me downtown and saw my first fight, and guy threw a kick and hit the guy in the neck and knocked him out. And I said, I'm in. Oh. So that Monday on the base for the GIs, they had Taekwondo. Well, Taekwondo in Thailand to me is the same. To me, it was no difference. I didn't know that Taekwondo is a Korean art. And those were the ones that were assigned to train the GIs. 3 months later, they left. So the Thais took over. And, I just kind of ate, slept, and dreamt martial arts, opened up my own school of kickboxing, and moved to Vegas 26 years ago to follow my dreams.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been a crazy life. And, what really blows me away is to this point, I've never asked for one job. I've been in like 7 movies. I've written 2 books. I have top trading cards. I have, T-shirts from sponsors. It's just unbelievable things have happened to me working with the best fighters in the world, and boxing, MMA, bare knuckle fights, kickboxing. It's just, it blows my mind that why me?
They say if you give to the universe gives back to you. Do you feel like you gave a lot to get that, or are you just the lucky? I'd rather be lucky than good. Don't get me wrong.
No, I gave. When I did the first Creed movie. Me, Sylvester Stallone, I told them, I said, I can't sleep at night. So, here I am in Philadelphia, 6 weeks working with you, Michael B. Jordan, Tessa Thompson, Ryan Coogler, and he said, you earned it. And I thought about it, and I said, yeah, you know what? I paid my dues. I earned it, and I've always given back.
What people don't see, Stitch, is they don't see the years of you doing the corners and everything for pennies and doing the stuff just to get your name out there. What made you choose cuts? Being a cut man?
Well, I had my own school of kickboxing in Fairfield, California. After I started working with amateur boxers in Oakland, King's Gym, where Andre Ward is from. Mm-hmm. And I remember Andre always told me when he was a kid, when I turned pro, I want you to be my cut man. Well, that happened. So I had my school of kickboxing in Fairfield, and I had A-level fighters. And so I was a trainer. I promoted fights. I managed the fighters. But being a cut man kind of floated to the top. And so I made the move to Las Vegas 26 years ago. I used to work for R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company. I worked for them for 23 years in sales. So I got a job transfer, and I took a big dive and cut.
Right.
I came here to follow my dreams.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, we were talking outside. I want to get into some of the old time stories because there's so much I want to cover with you. You know, this was a tough year, specifically for boxing. We lost Marvin Hagler. So this was a really interesting year. And being from Boston, Hagler was a hero of mine coming up. We were talking about a lot of his old time fights. I want to start there. In my opinion, Hagler was, that time was the best time in fighting. And Hagler was, to me, doesn't get the respect he deserves historically because of the Leonard fight. Where does that sit with you, and how do you see losing Hagler this year and the legacy of boxing and what he did and how he retired? And do you agree that that was maybe the golden era? How do you see that era?
Yeah, I do. Really, Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard.
Oh, it was loaded.
These guys, Pepino Cuevas, you had all these guys that were just fighters. And as Roger Mayweather said, they fought. They didn't fight for the money. It was for the prestige. And
right.
I fight you, and weights didn't make a difference. So that was that era. But Marvin Hagler, a lot of respect for him, for sure. And I think I worked with Mike McCallum also. Mike McCallum and Hagler didn't get the respect they had because they were too good for what these guys wanted to do. Nobody wanted to fight Mike McCallum because he was dangerous and didn't have a big name. Marvin Hagler he was a guy that would brawl. And if you look at, the judging, the scoring, some like a Sugar Ray Leonard type of fight, and they would score it.
How would you have scored it?
I don't know, man. I don't predict fights. I do too many of them. I don't know.
That's the hardest one, right, of all time. I mean, it's agreed that that's like the most difficult one to score.
Yeah, it's tough, man.
So if you were teaching someone how to score, you'd give them a pen and paper and say, "Sit down and watch this. Tell me what you come up with."
And then turn the volume off.
And then turn the volume off.
Yeah. So that's how they do it.
Yeah, it's amazing. We were talking outside and we were getting into this. I watched this documentary and I had followed this story about the guy with the doctor gloves, the fight. And I always forget, it was Collins, right? Was the white kid's name.
Yeah, Billy Collins.
And then you had a Spanish guy,
Louis Resto.
Louis Resto. I always forget his first name, but Resto. Because in the documentary they call him Resto over and over again. But Louis Resto was the fighter. If you haven't seen this documentary, it's amazing. And it happens around the same era. It's like 80 something that it happens. But the guy literally had cast, Louis Resto had cast put on his gloves, and he fought a complete boxing match. And at the end, the father grabs his gloves. How common was this back in the day? And walk me through this story as you've seen it, because you work with some of these guys. But what a crazy story if anyone hasn't looked into it. It was a lot of fucking intrigue. But Louis Resto ends up getting run out of boxing and so on. But take me through kind of that era and what was going on and what guys were getting away with it and why they were getting away with it.
Well, Darren, that's a good question, and very, very few people have asked that question, so I'll give you some good answers on what I know, right? Louis Resto versus Billy Collins, but I remember seeing the fight, and then I remember reading the article on Sports Illustrated where Billy Collins is telling his father, I feel like I'm getting hit with stones, with rocks, and sure enough, he's getting beat up, and it's Louis Resto's a good journeyman, but at the end of the fight, the father goes to congratulate him, and he feels that there's nothing on the padding. So,
now, before you go forward, I want to stop you there for a second. He had suspicions during the fight.
Louis Resto.
Well,
both.
I think both sides. There was some weird. There was a weird unsaid chess match of looking across the thing. Why didn't they stop it sooner? I was curious to see your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, why are you going to stop it?
Right.
On just pure theory? Well, that's not going to work,
It's too risky.
Yeah,
too risky.
It's and then that fight was, I mean, nobody complained like, hey, check his gloves. Like in baseball, check his belt, check his cap. That didn't happen, but during that time, things like that didn't happen. You just kind of fought. But and you said they put a cast. It wasn't a cast. What it was were the gloves in those days were made out of horsehair. And what Panama Lewis did is on the inside, he cut a little cut, and they took that horsehair out, and of course they wrapped Louis Resto's hands, and
he could pierce through a lot.
He could pierce right, it goes right through it. There was no padding, and like I said, when the father got the glove, he held onto it, and both Louis Resto and Panama Lewis went to prison.
They suffer greatly for it, lifetime bans. And do you agree with it?
Yeah, of course. Whenever you try to destroy somebody as an unfair practice, that's just not. The job that I have here, John, is I'm here to take care of fighters. I'm here to educate. This sport here, I always say all combat sports, boxing, kickboxing, MMA, bare knuckle fights, we don't have, coaches and cutmen don't have to be certified to be considered professionals. You go into every other sport, even your college days at Mass, these trainers were certified through education.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so I there's a lot of
Dark arts.
there's a lot of dots. That's why I always try to teach. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny watching, that story play out. You felt for the guy, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You have to.
And you brought this up out there because of the education and certain things in fighters. A lot of people don't realize this. You brought it up out there, and I didn't realize that you brought it up. Some of these guys, they don't even have a high school diploma. Right. They get started very young. And I know this is an excuse, but you kind of feel bad for the guy a little bit. You're like, oh, this was his whole life. This was all he had.
I see it all the time. I'm in the gyms, and you see these guys that, number one, they're broke, but their dream is to become a world champion. Well, not everybody's going to become a world champion. They're talking about 1% of the people.
Of 1%,
They 99% of the money, But, it's a tough road. But, I years ago, I put a documentary together called Boxer's Nightmare, that with all the stuff fighters went through. And
I got to watch it.
And I sent out a survey. Never went nowhere because I presented it to the wrong people, the ones that didn't want to change the game. HBO, Don King, these guys. So a majority of these guys, because I sent out questionnaires to get information that I knew, but a majority of these guys have less than a high school diploma. And then on annual income, a majority of these guys made less than what's on the poverty level. And it really hasn't changed a whole lot since then.
How do you fix it, though?
Education, bro. I mean, slowly but surely, maybe, all combat sports, like every other major sport, you can't have a union because we're all independent contractors, but God, let's get an association. Get a barrier where you as a young fighter could log on to do, and then if you need legal advice.
Resources.
You got to make them available to them.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like managers, a management contractor says you could go from 1 to 33 and 30%. Well, these fighters, when they present it to them, they don't tell them that. So a majority of the time, manager will get 33 to 30%.
Wow. I struggle with this because I know the downside of a union, too, and I know you do, too. So there's good and bad. The problem sometimes fighters don't realize is with a union, you get uniform stuff, okay? Yeah. It's very hard.
You get a fair deal.
You get a fair deal. Yeah. It's very hard to say, like, one of the reasons in WWE they didn't end up having a union was Hogan didn't want to do it because the highest paid guy sometimes is going to take a little bit of an initial cut to bring everybody else up because how are they going to fund it? So what they do is they end up doing these across-the-board deals, as you know, and that's very dangerous. So I see it from both sides, and I haven't quite formed an opinion on it. I think in boxing it's a harder sell because at the top you have guys making so much money that are at the top, and those guys aren't going to want to acquiesce to say, yeah, we'll take a little less to feed the undercard and feed the mid-card, and you have too many failures at the bottom. I think you have to still earn it on the way up, and somewhere in the middle is the reality, is where you start making the real money. I think social media can be a great equalizer stitch in that for some of these guys.
Yeah, well, and it's a good point. Very, very good point. I'll give you a good answer to that. When I did this documentary years and years ago, Mark Ratner was a commissioner at that time.
Sure.
A lot of respect for this man. Basically, he says, hey, man, get 25% out of each ticket sold and put it into this type of kitty. And that way you could create
a feeder system.
Yeah, well, you could create a website that has legal advice, a website that has this, and sponsorships, and you could create that where a young guy like you, you're not going to get the money off the fighters. They want Mike Tyson during that documentary says, you know what, guys like me, Oscar De La Hoya, Holyfield, we need to give some of our money back to these guys. We don't need it. We're taken care of. We're okay. That was Mike Tyson. So, but it's not going to happen. Because not everybody thinks that way.
Yeah, you'd have to. The only way it would work now is you'd have to get a guy or get a group of guys like you just brought up to monetize it, to create a system that you pay a dues into, just like a union.
Yes, 100%.
And people don't realize in a union you pay dues.
Yes. Yeah,
if you didn't pay dues back in the day, they come break your legs.
Right.
But you paid. It was different then. But you pay dues, and in paying the dues, whether it's $50 or whatever it used to. In the old days it wasn't all that much. But you pay your dues, and in paying them, you get a membership. That's the best way to do it. Tyson should monetize that. He'd be a guy that could do it.
Sure.
He'd be the right guy to do it. So that's such an interesting one. And there is no perfect answer on how to fix it. And I think we all know that. I think the eventuality is that guys get some level of insurance, some level of protection.
And you're 100% right. And if anything, that kitty of 25 cents per ticket.
Whatever,
Why not put it into that and give it there for guys that are injured? So I agree on that.
I think the first step in the membership is getting some level of health or insurance or some type of treatment. I think that's the first step that'll draw guys in to be a part of it. And I think that's the way to do it. But yeah, I mean, there's no perfect formula. There's no magic bullet.
You know, I also work with the bare knuckle fighting, Dave Feldman. Dave Feldman's doing a tremendous job for the fighters and for the fans. But the way he takes care of the fighters is instrumental. But they're putting together a pension plan for these guys, which is after they fight. I don't know how much he would be accumulated between now and then, but the point is he's taking that first step. And it's always that first step that's the
first guy
one.
through the door takes the bullets.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so that's Dave Feldman. But in this sense, you could take those shots and just come back with a counter.
Right.
You know,
right.
because when you do things the right way, you know. So a lot of respect to him. I saw him when Mayweather fought Logan Paul and talked to him, and I'll be back with them in August. So.
Now, what do you think of those celebrity fights, the Logan Paul stuff? What do you think of that?
I've done them all.
They're all.
To me, it's a different world. Number one, I've been in the movies, so I get to see these guys like Michael B. Jordan perform in my in my sport, right?
Right.
Same thing with these guys. I worked with KSI when he fought Logan Paul, and I worked with Gibb when he fought Jake Paul, and I was on the Mayweather card and the Tyson Jones. So I've seen them. To me, they're fine. You know, I like them.
I think people forget, Stitch, sometimes that demos have always been going on. You know, that these types of, I don't like to call them celebrity cash grabs, but these type of demo fights, they happen. And they happen with special people that build a certain presence. There's no doubt that I think Jake Paul can throw a punch. I think Jake Paul trains. There's no question that Logan Paul's a good athlete. There's no question about that. Whether or not Jake wants to turn it into a career and take it to the next level is another thing. But I think people put too much emphasis on it needs to be like this, whatever it is. Don't you? I mean, how do you see it?
You know, and let me add, first and foremost, Jake Paul and Logan Paul are both athletes. And I told them from get-go. And BJ Flores trains them. And not BJ and I worked with BJ many years. So they know if I'm going to tell you something, it's going to be the truth. But these guys, and I tell people, these guys, they were wrestlers in the background before. And when you're a wrestler, because you're an athlete. And you've gone through the pain and the hurt and the sacrifices of what it takes to be a fighter. So they're good fighters. I like the system, you know, because these young guys, Ben Askren never would have got $500,000 in any show to get knocked out quick, right? I think Vitor Belfort's going to fight Oscar De La Hoya. Anderson Silva just fought, you know. So that's the new generation, social media. And, you know, like someone like The Zone that works on subscriptions, to me it made them a lot of sense because these 20 million people that KSI had and the 20 million something that Logan Paul had all tuned in. So it makes sense.
Do you think they're pulling down good numbers?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think it's as bad. I know people like to say like, oh yeah, there's no way they're pulling.
Listen, the numbers aren't coming off of the combative people. They're coming off of these young social media guys. My Instagram's kind of shot up when I work with KSI, but you know they're all young guys. That's where the money's coming in from. And of course, you're getting some of these guys, but everybody's talking about them. I remember when the UFC first came on, Jim Lampley and all these guys. I tried to talk to them, and nobody wanted to hear it. Now years later, they're asking me questions. You know? So the same thing with that.
Did it surprise you coming from that foundation of the glory days of boxing and the era I loved too? Did it surprise you that UFC and MMA came in so strong and came in so hard?
No. I'm kind of glad it did the way it did, you know. And I think the big, the finale where the start of it was Forrest Griffith when he fought Stephen Bonner.
Oh yeah.
You know, that kind of boosted the UFC to where it's at now, and it was funny. But boxing people, I'll knock him out with one shot, and I'll knock. You know, I heard that all the time. But I tell these guys, look, when these guys get dropped, they're not down. You don't take an 8 count. These guys will grab your leg, and once they grab your leg, you're done.
You're done.
When James Toney fought Randy Couture, it took that long.
Yeah.
You know, and just two different styles.
Absolutely. It surprised me that UFC was able to get in the 50 states as quickly as it did and as quickly as it transitioned from literally like a barroom brawl type thing to an authentic, real, I mean, they cleaned it up fast. And we went from Tank Abbott and whoever else, and nothing against those guys, but it turned into a legitimate martial art. And I think we do crown the best martial art, whether you agree the best heavyweight is at UFC or at Bellator or whoever. I think Ryan Bader is a great champion. I think there's a lot of great champions out there. It surprised me how quick they cleaned it up.
And that's a good point, and I'll give you the behind the scenes stuff that got me in there. See, I knew Dana years before the UFC, and Lorenzo and Frank. When Lorenzo was inspector or commissioner for the Nevada State Athletic Commission, but I knew Dana in the gyms, and he's the one that brought me in. But he said, they had implemented something like 34, 35 new rules, and me as a fan, as a martial artist, I quit watching the original UFC because it was too brutal.
Yeah.
The only rules for the most part were there were no rules.
Biting, right?
Yeah, something like that, but you could hit them nuts, So, but with that, I joined. I came on board with the UFC, and from there we structured the program that basically everybody uses right now. Behind the dresser with the cutmen and all that, everything that you see in MMA, I created.
And I love that there's competition, because having boxing and MMA and all the different leagues is good for you.
Yes, of course.
There's plenty of feeder systems. And I don't think boxing has suffered that much. I think if boxing suffers from anything, and I want to get your thoughts on it, I think there's just too many divisions. There's 95 belts at every fucking 5 pounds.
Hey, listen, I'm working these top ranked fights, and I'm looking at the fight that I'm working. It's a 10-rounder. It's for some mid-Atlantic, super out in the desert belt.
Champion.
Nothing. Why? But let me tell you, these associations, when they sanction a fight like that, they give a belt, they take 3% of your cash, of your purse.
So you get the belt.
So you get the belt. So, like the Klitschko's, and that's why Floyd Mayweather said, I don't need no belts. Why give these guys 3% of what I'm making
Of the VIG, yeah.
for to be the champion of this division?
Yeah, that makes sense. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So everybody, we should start a belt.
Yeah, why
We
not?
should start a belt 152 and a half.
Yeah.
But to me, that's what holds boxing back. I think there's too many associations, too many belts. It makes it harder to follow.
Mm-hmm.
You make it easier to follow. That's why the heavyweight belt is always the easiest to follow. Or the lineal champion is always the easiest to follow. Not everybody realizes in boxing, you have Tyson Fury, who you've worked with. He had been the lineal champion for so long. Not a lot of people understand what lineal champion means. Can you break that down for everybody, what that actually what it actually translates into?
Can you explain it to me?
I think I can.
I don't even know what a lineal champion is.
So Tyson Fury had what was called the lineal championship. And the lineal championship means you can trace back that you beat a champion to get to the lineal champion. But it's a fictional championship, right?
First time I've heard about it.
Yeah, it's a fictional thing, because remember, that was the whole thing. So they sell you on the idea that you have to unite the belts and you have to beat the lineal champion. That's how they get their VIGs. It's all making sense to me now as we're talking about it.
Sure. Oh, the 3%?
It's a great racket.
Yeah, sure it is. That's why these guys fly to these events first class. Right?
Private jets. I hadn't thought of it that way.
It is a system.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Hey, we got to start a belt.
Yeah, we should.
We should.
Stitch Premium Athletic Championship Belt.
Athletic Championship. We have to come up with an acronym for that, like Stitch SPC Championship. Stitch There we go.
That's crazy.
We'll start an association. We got to do that. That sounds like there's free money in that.
It's out of my league, man.
So you're doing corners and you're doing cuts, and you come up with these systems to take care of fighters, but along the way the movies happen.
Yeah, just by fate. To this point, like I said, John, I've never asked for one job, But the first one was actually I was just leaving R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company. I took a buyout after 23 years, and I was working with my manager the last day of work, and I always gave you 150%, So I was expecting to work 8 to 5 on my last day, right? And I get a call that they want me to audition for Play It to the Bone, Woody Harrelson and Antonio Banderas, right? And man, I'm nervous. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm working with Augie, and finally I said, Augie, look, man, I got an opportunity to go do an audition for a movie. He said, hey, man, I'm just here to sign you out. I was gone, so I went home, got my Cornerman jacket, and my only audition I've ever done. And I played the role. And so I got the job as a cut man. So it was me and Chuck Bodak. If you remember, Chuck Bodak was a legendary cut man with looked like Colonel Sanders.
Right.
Would put the tape on his head of the fighters. And so it was him and I. And I wanted to be with Antonio Banderas because he was a Latino. But Chuck Bodak got in front of me. He was the bigger star than Woody Harrelson. So I had Woody Harrelson. But Woody during the movie is the one that gets cut. And the words are, you don't worry, you got the best cut man in the business. And so, yeah, that was my first movie. And God, I've done 6, 7 other ones. I got a couple more in the pipeline. It's crazy.
It's crazy that you never asked for them. Now, you're doing the Antonio Banderas movie, which I remember that movie. Could those guys? Well, how did those guys learn to fight when they're doing that movie? Did you guys have to teach them, or did they have guys on set to show them?
Yeah, that's a good question again. They came prepared. I just came in that week of the fights just to play the role, and they was at the Mandalay Bay. But there was one scene, and they did crack each other, time for time. Every day I wrap Woody Harrelson's hands and we would, shoot the shit and all that. But there was one scene where I guess he wasn't happy in the techniques that he did in the sparring or in the fight. That he just, all right, cut, and he starts walking outside of the Mandalay Bay, and it's my first movie, and he's walking out, and I say, hey, Woody, if you need some help, let me know. And I'm thinking, wow, what am I just doing? This is a Hollywood guy, and he might think I'm arrogant. Well, he stops and says, no, come on, Stitch. So him and I go outside and say, look, here's what you get, that rotation, everything's camera.
You got it.
Rotation, this, and we took a picture together, and at the rap party, as they call it, he had an 8x10 signed, and Stitch, you're so cool. Thank you for all your help, Woody Harrelson. So
yeah, I remember that movie.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was a funny movie. And then the Creed movies happen, which is big.
Yeah, well, before that, I did Ocean's 11.
You did Ocean's 11.
When Lennox Lewis is fighting Vladimir Klitschko.
You've been in a ton of stuff.
Yeah, I'm telling you. I got to meet all these guys, and after that movie, Ocean's 11, I started working with Vladimir Klitschko. That was the heavyweight champ of the world. I worked with him like 12 years.
It's amazing.
And then I did Balboa when Rocky fought his last fight. I was in the other corner with Antonio Tarver, Mason the Line Dixon. Yeah. And Creed 1, Creed 2.
Was it weird working with Tarver and you hadn't worked with him before?
No. For me, everything I do is systematic.
Was he like, hey, man, I need I feel like I should have hired you?
Yeah, exactly.
That type of thing?
Yeah, no, exactly. So, but it was cool because I brought in that movie, Balboa, Joe Cortez called me. And they say, hey, man, are you interested? And at that time, I told them no because I had a world title fight in Paris, France with Fabrice Diozo. And then the week later, I was going to work with the Olympian Audley Harrison. And I called my wife. She goes, "Are you crazy? Because you have to take it. Rocky's an American icon. Never done."
Yeah, you had it.
Yeah.
You can't.
So I was already negotiating with the ones in England. I deleted it and I said, "I hope you guys understand." So and so, and they did. And turns out that the fight in Paris got canceled anyway.
Oh.
So I've been following my wife's advice
for
that
the
day
rest
on.
of it.
Yeah, of course, So
that's amazing. Now you've been fortunate to sit on the sidelines and see a lot of really cool stuff play out over the years, and we said a lot of cool stories. In your opinion, and you've been around, do you put Tyson on the pedestal, or do you agree with guys who say maybe Tyson was the guy, maybe it was Holyfield? Who was the best fighter of our generation?
You talking about Tyson?
Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson. It's hard to say. Mike Tyson did what he did through power. Right. Holyfield did what he did through power and technique. That was a great fight that they had.
Yeah.
And
I still say the fight before prison would have been the fight.
I agree. I agree. But then keep in mind the Holyfield's coming up from
Cruiser.
So I don't know. We're all armchair quarterbacks, and God, I hate to be that guy.
I know. But if you had to build a Mount Rushmore, just boxing.
Yeah. From that area, of course, Larry Holmes and. But yeah, Mike Tyson. You talking about the heavyweights only, or
in general?
God, that's a tough one, man.
I know.
You could pick guys from here to there, and Roberto Duran, Alexis Arguello were the ones I followed all the time. Larry Holmes. They all specialize in certain things and techniques. Lomachenko over the weekend. I'm looking at the fight. I'm there at the fights, right? And everything that he did was just poetry in motion.
Yeah.
So guys have different techniques and all that, but it's tough to say. That's like me saying I like you more than I do
Rory. So I would say this. Somebody asked me this once. If I had to make a Mount Rushmore, I would have said, you have to put Ali there. You have to put Sugar Ray Robinson there. You have to put Roy Jones Jr. there, in my opinion. And you start with those three. Then if you want to add Tyson because of the, fastest to the heavyweight title, 21, he might be, far off to the side. But if you had to pick 5 or 6, you start to put those in there. And then I would put Hagler and Julio Cesar Chavez in there.
Yeah. My first world title fight, I worked with Tony the Tiger Lopez from Sacramento, California, and he fought Julio Cesar Chavez. My first world title fight in Monterrey, Mexico. In a baseball stadium. So talking about feeling like
stadiums.
Baseball, and baseball was my game, right?
Yeah.
So here I go right in the fights are there against Julio Cesar Chavez. So that was my first fight. Now I've
Amazing.
done so many. I've told these guys, I said, I've done hundreds and hundreds of world title fights. That it's not even the fights anymore. It's the characters that I work with, the people.
Do you save anything from the fights?
No, cornerman jackets, maybe. That's it. Just have them hanging up or have them in boxes.
You got to do like a world tour. Like it was said that Roger Clemens, when he was retiring, he took the dirt from every mound in every major league stadium. You almost have to like take a piece of the ring, start cutting a piece of the ring from everything, and make a quilt.
Listen, you walk into my house and there's nothing there that shows that I'm in the game, except in one hallways, the Klitschko brothers, classic, best people. When Vladimir retired, they flew us out. This is like 3-4 years ago. They flew us out to Austria to their training camp, which was in the Alps, and they made bronze statues of both of them. It weighed like 50 pounds, man. It ruined so they gave them to us as a way of saying thank you for being part of the team, just for the weekend. Then I flew back home.
Yeah.
And I have that, and then I have Andre Ward when he won the Super Six. I have one of the gloves, and then my nephew made a nice poster of me.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
The rest it's home. But I got a lot of stuff, a lot of memories.
Now I gotta ask, when you got the call from Stallone to do the Creed movies, or you get the call and they're going to be that has to be the ultimate. Now there was a time, probably around when Tarver there was a little bit of a taboo around doing boxing movies, huh? A little bit. And I think because of the whole thing with Rocky, what was it, Rocky V, when it was like cursed. It was like being on the cover of a Madden. You know what I mean? Like it was like there was like this like curse. It's changed now. Now, like there is a celebrity to it, and that I think is really cool. That it's changed over. It used to be kind of tacky, like I'm doing a movie, but now I think it's a thing, and I think you had a part in that. I think Hogan, when he was in the Rocky movie, was a big deal for him. But I think somewhere along the way it became a little cheesy, like I'm gonna do it. But then it became the cool thing to do, and you had a hand in that for sure. Like that's a real cut man up there.
And you're right, and then that. Thanks, but you're right. That situation of bringing in a real cut man made a lot of sense. Just like these Triller shows, that they bring me in, and because if they see Stitch working the corners,
it's legit.
It's a legit show.
Yeah,
that I understand. But yeah, to come in every movie I've been in, I played myself.
It's kind of like in Sopranos when he's like, "You went down there to Miami, you validated him." It validates it, and there's something to be said about that. But there used to be this little bit of a taboo, because of everything that happened with Tommy Morrison that time, and how that played out, because he was supposed to be the heir apparent to the heavyweight title, but he took, ended up the AIDS and everything else. Was he the biggest downfall of a fighter, you think?
I don't know, man.
He's a hard one to beat.
It's a hard one to beat.
He took an absolute, was it a savage punch? Yeah. And one of
Ken Norton, was it Ken Norton?
Ken Norton.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and he battled back a little bit from it, but he was never the same. And they said he had AIDS, way back. They hadn't blown the whistle on him. They finally did. Was it that shoddy or that hard to believe that they maybe didn't blow the whistle on him, or were the?
Well, during that time, the commissions weren't as strong as they are now. They weren't looking at all these different situations and all that. But yeah, man, that wasn't good for him. It wasn't good for the game.
No.
And just like Teofimo Lopez, for this last Triller show, he tested positive for COVID, and that should have been prevented in the position that he was in.
Should have been caught.
Should have been caught.
Yeah, the Tommy Morrison one comes to mind, and I think that kind of soured it. Then Antonio Tarver does that fight, and then it does the Rocky movie, and it kind of changes things. It starts to change, I noticed at that time, to be more of a validating thing than anything, and that's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome, and just like the Creed movie. My name is, I get the script and it's Marcel. And I said, man, I don't know anybody named Marcel, right? So I'm going to work on having to change that, right? But when it was time for Rocky to introduce us to Adonis, so Rocky says, oh, this is Stitch. He's the best cut man in Philadelphia. Bro, my heart went like this. Bam, I was just so glad. And the next day I thanked him. He goes, no, it has to be authentic. Sylvester Stallone, I got to give him credit. I've done 3 movies. Who has done 3 movies with Sylvester Stallone? Very few people.
Talia Shire, probably.
Yeah, so, but I saw him act, because in the Balboa, he wrote it, acted, and directed, and I saw 3 of those phases. And then working with him side by side in the corner with Michael B. Jordan, he was good at what he did. Just instinctively giving the instructions, because we have a minute break. And I know my minute break. I know from second to second, give or take 1 or 2. When Rocky gave the instruction and he ad-libbed. It was like 58 seconds. So I told him, I said, you know what? I look at things like that. 'Cause that for me, working the corner is the most important thing. These other, they brought me in also as a consultant. You know, the Russian fight when Creed is fighting, the referee's gloves are all black, but they're all wrinkled. I said, hold on. I pulled them all the way back. I taped them high above the wrist, and then I put his sleeve over it so they were skin tight. Little things like that I look at, you know, that people in our industry look at.
Right.
So it was.
It's like anything else. It wasn't until the John Wick movies that gun handling was like highly scrutinized in movies. Like you get guys that they don't even know what they look like. They don't know what they're doing. There's an authenticity that has to come with it. And when you add something like that, I have to imagine Stallone being obsessed with authenticity. He's like, that's awesome. Thank you. You know, like that's a great moment. He doesn't interrupt you. Just, you know.
Nah, I tell you, man, to me it was a pleasure, but I told him, I said, you know how many times I had to dispel and educate people on that cut me Mick? I said, it doesn't have, it's a Hollywood thing, right? But it's a famous line. I said, because number one, we're not surgeons. Number two, you're doing surgery without being licensed. You're doing it in a dirty place. They're spitting all that. And not only that, but now you're going to have not only swelling, but you're going to have blood.
Where did that come from? Do you think they?
I don't know, but that was a great line. Cut me, Mick.
Yeah,
cut me. That was perfect.
Yeah.
So, but in doing that, I was just saying that at the fight Saturday, Michael B. Jordan had told me 3 years ago when I was wrapping his hands. It was always him and I in the dressing room, and I said, you know, Michael, I'm just so proud of you and Tessa and Ryan Coogler and Steve Capo on what you guys have done. And he says, Stitch, we went from being actors to writers, producers, and directors. And he looks at me like this, and he says, I'm directing Creed 3. And you're with me as long as you want. Mm-hmm. So I said, man, to me, that was an honor. But as I look at it, if I do Creed 3, then I am the modern version of what Mick was to Rocky.
Right.
Stitches Adonis's cut man.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so, and even when Rocky got sick and he threw up, remember? Mm-hmm. And Michael B. Jordan, we had just left. In the movie, the coaches had just left, myself included, and Michael B. Jordan knew at that time that he tried to call my name out. So he yelled out, Stitch! And they filmed in the second floor. We filmed in the second floor. And it was snowing outside in Philadelphia, so we were waiting on the steps going down, and I didn't know what the filming was. But when I heard Stitch, my reflexes was to go up, and not that maybe it's part of the movie. Well, it wasn't part of the movie, but that's what he did in the ad-libs. So the next day I told Michael, I said, look, man, I'm not one to kiss ass or anything like that, but that scene was dynamic, and I'm going to tell you why. Because you know my job is to take care of you as a cut man. I had just left. Rocky went through this moment, and the first thing that popped into your head is called Stitch.
Get the cut man, yeah.
That was legit, man.
Yeah. Did they leave that in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember the scene of you being introduced to him, and I got to go back and watch it. But I remember him throwing up, and in the storyline, he gets, everybody listening, Rocky gets cancer and is sick, and he goes through a period with Adonis's training when he's in recovery. And he's pretty much hugging a toilet bowl the rest of the couple of scenes, but he's going through chemo and everything else. So it's incredible, and the journey. And Michael B. Jordan sells the idea of being a boxer. I mean, he is a tremendous athlete, and he's in killer shape.
Yeah, and and once again, I mean, I told you I'll have stories for you, man.
Yeah.
So I'm wrapping Michael's hands. The first movie, I'm wrapping his hands in about the 5th week, and I stopped. I said, Michael, I said, look, man, I'm going to knight you as a fighter because everything that you've done, you represented our sport at the highest level, and you could fight. So I did. I kind of just gave him the sign of the cross and knighted him as a fighter. And you're right. And they did work hard because in Creed 2, see, I'll give you this story. It's Friday, we did the show, and he's fighting Ivan Drago's son, and they're working hard where they're sucking wind.
Right.
But I say goodbye to Michael, and he says, what do you think about my knee? And I touch it, and it's full of water. So, man, you got to go get that drained. So he worked that hard to create that kind of injury. Come back Monday, and he showed me the film of guy putting the needle in there and drawing all that out. So, those are the moments that, for me, I love talking about them.
Yeah, he's got to train hard to get in that type of shape. He has to train hard to get that type of look and to be able to sell it on the screen. It's not easy.
No.
And he did a phenomenal job. It's very rare that you see a trilogy or a saga of movies like the Rocky movie spin off into a successful second trilogy, which Creed is doing. That's very hard to do in cinema. You don't see it that often. Once in a while, you might get a better second movie than the first movie, like The Godfather Part 2 or Empire Strikes Back or something like that. But it's very rare to be able to spin that off into another saga, and he's been able to do that and tell a great story along the way. I mean, the way Stallone pieced that together, it's really his swan song in so many ways to pass the torch and be able to do that. And somebody it showed me a picture the other day and I said, Stallone still looks phenomenal. I mean, he stays in tremendous condition.
It's tremendous, man. And, I have to tell you a story. I was laughing because we're on break and we're talking to the makeup people and Sly and me, and then Frank is Sly's.
Yeah, Frank.
Yeah, you know Frank,
yeah.
right? So Frank's telling the makeup people, oh, yeah, Stitch, man, he great cut, man, and all that. He looks like Edward James almost, right? And that quick, bro, Sly's like this with his arms crossed, and he walks away. He goes more like Edward James almost.
Almost.
I said, man, I'm a good counterpuncher, but there's nothing I can say to that one.
The funny thing about Frank is we've been trying to get Frank on for a while. His name's come up because he's super into archery, super into martial arts. He's super into a little bit of everything, and he's just a character. Yeah. So I've had a couple people reach out to Frank. We've been trying to get him out here, but COVID hit and everything else, so we're trying to get him on. But Frank's had such an interesting career, and he just came out with that piece, Stallone, Frank, or whatever it is, the whole documentary. And I watched the whole thing. He's had such an interesting ride being Stallone's brother. It's a lot being Sly's brother. It's an interesting story.
Well, this Frank was Sly's friend.
Oh, it was just his friend. It wasn't his brother. Okay.
No, it was his friend.
It was just his friend.
And he was there on the set with him.
Okay.
So I just want to make that clear.
He's got to bring his brother back in some way to sing, though. Something in the story. That would be hilarious. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, it's amazing what he's done. And in the Creed trilogy will be phenomenal. There's no doubt. And there's a lot of people interested in that story. But Rocky has to be the best patron saint of a sport, of anyone, really, in so many ways.
Yeah, you got to give him props. And he deserves to be in the Boxing Hall of Fame because of the interest that he brought to the fight at the highest level. So, yeah, no doubt about it. I'm just proud and glad to say I've done 3 movies with Sly. Yeah, it's
amazing. Now, being a veteran, you get to travel a lot and give a lot back to veterans, charities and things like that. You mentioned traveling and getting a chance to participate in a lot of them. Is that something that's more of a passion for you, just to give a little back, spend some time with the guys out there?
Yeah, of course. Everything that I do outside of what I do mechanically in the fights, excuse me, I do it because to me they're accomplishments.
Right.
They're things that I have never had the opportunity to do. But doing these Armed Forces entertainment tours, I've done them with a lot of the UFC fighters and Georgian Ghost from MMA Junkie Radio, and it's good to be in the trenches. I mean, I've been to Afghanistan and gone out to up to the post out there, the FOBs as they call them, and Blackhawks and
spending time.
Oh, it was great, man. And I've done it with Tim Kennedy, sniper and super guy, and it's funny. We're in a bus, and I think we're in France, and we're going back somewhere, and he stops and he buys a bunch of liquor, and we're in the party bus. Well, there's like 6-7 of us, but it was a bus with chairs and beds and everything. And I said, man, Tim, I'm going to get you drunk. I told myself, I'm going to get him drunk, man. And towards the end, I said, man, Tim, my goal was to get, man, you got me drunk, man, and off of his liquor.
Tim Kennedy does quite a bit in our industry as well.
He's a great guy,
man. He's all over. And, having that experience of being able to spend time in the front lines and give back is something that I think a lot of guys, like yourself, cut from that cloth, don't talk about a lot.
Yeah, you're right, but I'll give you some of the stories that affected me. I guess it gave me the understanding that I work with gladiators as a sport, but going to Afghanistan, I saw these gladiators that don't play around. And one of my first encounters was at the Chow Hall, and it's coalition, right? So there's guys from Poland, and we're sitting down, and of course everybody has their weapons. And he said, Stitch, I studied Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it gave me the calming effect to accept death. And, of course, that caught my interest. He goes, I hear these bullets going, bzz, bzz, and I say, you know what, if I'm going, I'm taking you with me. And then there's me and Jake Shields and Amir Sanala.
Jake's been on, yeah.
Yeah. So we're walking the market, and this guy comes up and, hey, you guys, what's up, from Croatia, right? And being that I work with Crow Cop, I guess he knew that, right? But we took a picture, the 4 of us, and then he tells Jake and Amir, hey, no disrespect to you guys, I'm going to take a picture with Stitch. And he has his arm around me, and he tells him, he goes, I'm not a fighter, I'm a killer. And I think, wow. So I got to see the real guys, and talk to them. And it, whenever I went to every show, I would wrap somebody's hands, pick up and give them that as a souvenir. And yeah, it was just tremendous.
Yeah, I was at a dinner one time at the Arnold Classic. I'm not going to say who it was to because he's not here, and I don't want to embarrass him, but he's a really big Instagrammer and everything, and we got introduced as a couple guys from the gun industry. There was a few of us there who were from the defense industry, and he was talking, very intrigued, asking questions, about blowing shit up and everything else. And I said, yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. And I looked at him and I said, I said, it's different in our industry. I said, you guys all want to look like badasses. I said, I'm surrounded by guys that have been real killers. I said, it's a different kind of industry. And you could see in his face, like, just, he hadn't had that type of finality in a conversation. He was like, oh, wow. I said, yeah. I said, when you walk around SHOT Show and some of the places I've been, those guys have actually killed people.
Yeah.
I said, you just want to look like you're crazy. So it's a different, everything raises a different expectation. And when you're in the military, you commit to everything up to your life.
You give yourself, man.
Yeah.
I'm at Lonsdorf. I'm at the hospital in Germany over there. And this young guy had just, I guess he had gotten there. He got wounded in the leg, right? And his wife is there. So I guess they had just gotten there because she's crying.
Right.
And I walk in, hey, Stitch, what's up, man? I put my hand, I said, how you doing? I'm okay. I put my hand on his leg, and I'll never forget, it was hot. I guess it's just from
the treatment,
the shot and whatever. And I said, man, don't worry about it, man. I'll give you some strength. Months later, man, I'm flying out of Vegas, and he comes up to me and says, hey, man, I had met you in Germany and this and that. It was him. And it gave me chills, bro. And I said, how you feel? He goes, man, thank you. I feel good. Thank you.
The hardest part for you guys, I say this all the time when I have guests in, the hardest part for you guys, I don't know how you do this. Thank God I haven't been asked to do this. But you guys have to smile and, be on, all the time when you're on those trips and when you're out in front of those folks. You got to always be on.
There's a couple other ones, and we do a show at Camp Pendleton, the Marines, right?
Yeah.
So I was talking about it the other day to a Marine. I said, yeah, so I'm sitting there, and the guy behind me, hey, Stitch, can you take a picture with me? So I turned back. I said, yeah, of course, man. And he says, can you hold my leg? And man, these guys were all laughing. So I had to man up at that time. Right? But as I'm holding the leg, I'm thinking to myself, wow, the thing that this guy sacrificed to be here and
He's a hero.
To be laughing.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that was also good. And one of Tim Kennedy's friends in Afghanistan, like this, right? And he was in the hospital for like 6 months, and he says, yeah, he goes, I got stabbed here by a mother. He goes, but I don't blame her because I killed their 2 sons and her husband.
Yeah.
And I think, wow, man. So reality kicked in. But when it really kicked in was we were at a commando base at one of these FOBs, and the Afghan soldiers wanted to come meet us. And I look outside, and they're patting them down. Yeah. And I'm thinking, wow, man, this
it's real.
This is legit. This is legit.
It's a heightened.
So I was honored 100%, man, just to hear stories and to give back and inspire some of these guys. And some of us are friends now. There's Silverback was a special forces guy that I met, and we're best of friends. I went to the memorial in North Carolina, Fort Hood, 2 years ago. To sit with the Gold Star family.
It doesn't hurt to have a few of those guys laying around, right?
Yeah, man.
It doesn't hurt. It doesn't suck.
They're good people.
They're good guys.
And they're true gladiators.
And they'll stay in the foxhole with you.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And you can usually get some pretty good advice from some of those guys because they've seen it all, and they have a respect for death and a respect for putting their name down on paper. And the same goes for a lot of Leo guys, too. And it's great to spend time with those guys. Now, you're at a point in your career where you're picking and choosing your moments. Is there a lot of stuff you turn away?
It's by the grace of God, things happen like it's scheduled that way.
Right.
But if I have a double assignment, what I'll do is I'll recommend one of the guys that I've worked with. And they're usually guys that I've worked with together in MMA. Not so much boxing, because you could be a cut man in boxing and work 15, 20, 30 fights and maybe get one little cut. Mm-hmm. But guys in MMA, you're used to working on multiple cuts and all that. So these are the guys I would bring on board. But yeah, I always try to include, a circle of people that I work with.
That you have a relationship with. Yeah, and that's I would think, having at this point in fighting, you have to have a little experience in everything.
You have to understand them more physical. Well, physical is one part, but the mental part of it. That's where you can't. What do I say? You can't be taught that.
Yeah.
You have to understand. And I get doctors, nurses, EMTs, everybody wants to be a cut man because they see what we do. So they ask me, what do I have to do? And here's what I tell them: you got to spend hours and days and weeks and months and years in the gym, being a fighter, going what you guys go through, understanding. And at that time, you're wrapping their hands and getting their confidence. And like you said, you don't do it for the money. You got to pay your dues that way, and then slowly but surely work a corner, and then work. So it doesn't happen overnight.
It's funny you got to travel with Jake Shields. I've had Jake in here. He's an awesome guy. And I told him, I said, you know, your career, he's fought a gazillion fights, and he's an interesting one because he fought George St. Pierre a couple times, and history could have been very different for Jake, you know, and I'm happy to see him back around the fight game. He's been in Vegas recently. He's starting to train. He's starting to work with some people on some grappling. The sport needs him. I told him that. I said, the sport needs you all the time. He had taken a little bit of a time off, but Jake's one of the good guys, and talk about a guy that's been in there. I mean, he's got thousands of hours of ring time. I mean, he's awesome, and he's got some great stories. But he was fortunate to mix it up in the UFC when he fought some battles. I mean, that division was loaded back then. I mean, loaded, and he fought all comers. So Jake's one of the true warriors to get to travel around. When I'm sure you guys had some good stories between you.
Yeah, we did, man. It's always great, you know. But even in Afghanistan, because they have bunkers everywhere for us, right? We're staying and all that. And Jake and I were outside, see if there was any incoming. You know, we're that kind of guy, you know. So, but yeah, I've worked many of Jake's fights, and just a great, super guy. Man.
Oh, one of the best. Yeah. And I've had him on, and I had such a great experience chatting with him and just his history. I mean, being around the sport, he's another one with, I don't know, what's he got? Almost like 50 fights. I mean, it's crazy. Is there a time where you ever feel you need to step in? I ask a lot of guys this that work corner, and have the conversation that it's over with guys. Is that hard?
Yeah, but you know, it's, and you got to understand the guys that are working the corner are they're thinking on a personal basis, right? And they don't work as many fights as me. I'm neutral, but I'm here mechanically and physically and psychologically to give you 150%. But if I see there's a major disadvantage, of course I'll bring it up, you know, and you know, like I say, I don't say a lot, but when I do say something, it's the truth.
But explain to the audience, it's not like the movies when you call a fight. Like it's not as dramatic. There's signs, right? Like you're
Good question.
Yeah, I want people to understand that it's not like don't throw in the towel. Like it's not.
No. There's reasons why. And Andre Durrell is a boxer. We fought at the MGM in, I think, D.C. or Baltimore, wherever the MGM is at over there. And it was a rematch that he had with a guy named Esquiriga. And but he's taking the kind of shots that I consider long-term damage, the ones that hit you straight and they don't slide off or anything, and they just kind of shake that brain. So he was taking a lot of those type of shots.
Trauma.
And yes, trauma. And you know, during the fights, the doctors are to my right, and they're kind of discussing what's going on, right? So I get in there, and I'm keeping eyes on him and all that, and I'm working on him. I said, look, the doctors are talking about stopping the fight. Do you want to continue? And he goes like this, just a real small no. But that was enough for me to say,
enough.
Done. And then the trainer and the coach, no, one more round. But once he said no, that was it, you know, because mentally he's not prepared to go in there and go into battle. So he lost that, which is a big advantage. But the next day, about 8 a.m, him and his wife called me and they thanked me. And they said, yeah, you know, Stitch, I just didn't have anything.
Nothing left to give.
But that was the kind of stuff where you get long-term damage.
And I think you know, people give a hard time to Roberto Duran because he wanted to stop the fight, you know, and he said no mas, you know, the famous quote, you know. People don't realize, you know, that there are times where guys just lose that edge, you know, and it's not like it is I want people to understand, it's not like it is in the movie where the fighter grabs the towel from you and says, Stitch, no, it doesn't work that way. There are real things you're looking at and things you're keying in on, and I know what you mean. You can see when somebody's been rattled. Yeah. And that's a great point when they kind of say, they kind of hesitate. They look at you for a second, and you're kind of like, okay, you know, I need to say something, or something has to be filed away here, because if you don't act, there's a lot more regrets on the backside.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I've seen death. You know, it's one of the parts of being in this game for so long. You're going to see, unfortunately, you know, somebody die because of what happens in the ring. So yeah, safety is number one, man. And
Well, in the example we brought up in the Collins fight, with the hands wrapped, he ended up killing himself.
he did. Yeah. They suspected suicide. He ran into a tree. So you tell me. But the point is, he did. He passed away, and that was one of the heartbreaking things of what happened.
That whole
It
situation.
was crazy.
Yeah. It was absolutely bananas. If you watch the documentary, it is quite amazing. I hate to dwell on it, but it was an interesting story. Yeah. But you brought up earlier these fighters and the education and everything else. Do you keep in touch with them after, even some of the more journeyman guys? Do you stay in contact with them and see how their life progresses?
Yeah, there's Chai Smith, one of my kickboxers from years back, is in Kansas City.
Yeah.
So when I'd go do the Invicta fights, we would get together, and there's another guy, Chapo Vargas, that was my first Golden Glove fighter way back, and he's in Atlanta. So when I was there with Badu Jack, I never forget where I come from, and I never forget the people that.
It's a little bit of a coaching tree almost. Like you got these guys.
We're family. I got a message from a kid that was a student. He was 20 years old. I don't remember him, but he's saying, you really helped change my life. Now I have 3 children, boys, and this and that. And, I'm just so proud I tell people that you were my coach. And, moments like that are long term. So, I did something good coming to where I'm at right now. And even so, I grew up as a farm worker in the Central Valley of California, born and raised in a migrant camp. My address is CPC number 12 for California Packing Company. But I moved from that little to Planada. Planada is 1,500 people, small town. But if you notice on my fights, on my collar, I have Planada. Planada is the name of my little hometown. And it's not for the world to know where I'm from. It's for the ones from Planada to know that I'm there to support them. And little things like that.
Acknowledgement.
Yeah, it goes such a long way.
It goes a tremendous way. You never forget where you come from.
Never,
I don't think people forget that I'm from Boston every day. I think it's a hard accent to shake. But I envy, in so many ways, the career you've had. And I got really excited about having you on just because I love guys that step out of their comfort zone, do something unconventional, and have a lot of success at it. Have such success that they're there and they're validating the next generation and they're validating the next thing. And you've done that, and you've done that in this sport, and that's something that really is amazing. And I don't think enough people realize the unsung heroes like yourself, guys like yourself, that I talk about this a lot. They're not just veterans. They're not just somebody who's given back to the community, but they're now validating the next generation of whatever it is. Just to have that opportunity to do that, to make something authentic, is amazing in and of itself, and anyone can only hope to have a career like that. Plus, it was just fun showing you old pictures and stuff around the studio. But that's amazing. And being able to do that, it has to, you go home and you sit at the dinner table, and I say this to a lot of guests, life really boils down to a dinner time conversation. And you have a pretty cool one.
I do. I'm not gonna lie, man. I got more stories than anybody, and they're all true. If you ask me about any fighter, I'll probably give you a pretty good story.
And short of being at the table with an astronaut, you got a pretty good story.
Yeah, that maybe is my next step.
And that's what I tell everybody. I mean, like when you boil off all the fat in life, we're going to live, we're going to die, we're going to make money, we're going to spend money. When you're sitting at the table amongst friends and people you meet, it's cool to have a cool story.
That's it. Yeah, it is, and they're inspiring stories, but they're, like I just left before I came here. I was at the gym with Tyson Fury.
Yeah.
And the guys are, Joseph Parker gives me a hug, heavyweight fighter from New Zealand, kisses me on the cheek. Man, I love you. These guys are they're gentlemen, but there's a relationship that we have.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Is it going to be exciting working with Tyson coming up and how that plays out for him? Because his comeback story is really something amazing. You got to be excited to be a part of that.
Yeah, it was awesome the way it happened because on the fight when he got cut, he had Jorge Capetillo that brought him through, but let's not let that happen again, and Jorge Capetillo and Bob Arum and even Tyson said, let's bring Stitch in just because of my experience factor. And
tighten it up.
Yeah, but when I met him the first day, walking to Top Rank Gym, and Stitch, welcome to the team, best cut man in the business, and we talk about the cuts, and I, tell him, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to wait till something happens. I always do preventive maintenance. And then I said, well, Tyson, also, I work with sponsors. Do you mind if I make an outfit like yours and have my sponsors on them? He puts his hand on my shoulder. He says, Stitch, you can do whatever you want. Just no gambling or no drugs or liquor, and and fair enough. And so I spoke to him yesterday. In fact, I was at the gym today about we've negotiated our contract for this coming fight. And, well, what about sponsors? Yes, Stitch, go ahead, go for it. You know, so.
His story about depression's an amazing one. What he came back from and just, I mean, as out of shape as he was, too, and it's crazy.
And you know, he's so proud of telling that story,
Yeah.
you know, because it was a major accomplishment. And, you know, going back when I worked with Vladimir Klitschko and Tyson Fury beat him. And the first time I saw Tyson, I said, you know, we couldn't understand why Vladimir lost to you. Because Vladimir was that Ukrainian Ivan Drago
an
type
animal,
of guy
yeah.
and Tyson Fury and all that. But when I saw you fight Deontay Wilder in the next fight, I became a big fan of yours.
Yeah.
Knowing that what you did, no heavyweight could fight like that. You're designed, like Mayweather is to his style, Tyson Fury is to his style, and there's a Bruce Lee era. Remember, he says you float like water. That's the way he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
He's
a super good guy, man.
Yeah, he strikes me as a super awesome guy to hang out with. But I am impressed by his story. But do you ever feel you have to address the mental with some of these guys when you come in? Like, you know, you sit down with them and you have to feel like you have to address that, or is it just about the cuts?
No, all the time. And this goes back to, well, I'll give you the story with Vladimir Klitschko when he fought Anthony Joshua in 90,000 people. British people, which is like 150,000 somebody else from another country at Wembley Stadium, right? And the night before, I didn't see Vladimir and Vitaly till Friday at the weigh-ins because my daughter had got married in Crete on Wednesday, and then Thursday I flew to London in the nighttime, and so I saw him on the weigh-ins. But they know, like I say, if I don't say a lot, but when I say something, there's a lot of truth. So I put my hand on Vladimir also, and I said, look, don't worry about nothing tomorrow. I'm going to take care of you like you're my son, and I leave. Because I understand the night before a fight, the jitters, everything. And right before the fight begins, right before Michael Buffer does the announcement, I'm putting the final Vaseline on Vladimir. We're less than 12 inches apart. And between him and I, in front of the world, he says, you could call me son. And that gave me chills because I knew that had gotten to him on the mental side. And months later, I ran into him in Germany. And I said, Vladimir, I have to ask you that moment. Why did you say that? He says, Stitch, there's very few people that I trust with my life, and you are one of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and but all this came, and whether you could be a 4-rounder just making your debut or a world champion, I'm going to treat you the same because I don't even charge the 4-rounders, 6-rounders because I say, look, I want you to understand the importance of having a good team.
Right.
And this is what you need to have a good team.
Now, what do you make of you know, where it goes from here? What do you feel like you have to conquer anything else?
In this sport or
Yeah.
just in general? In this sport, no, you know what? I've done it all, man. I mean, God name it, I've been there.
Yeah.
You know, I've been in the greatest arenas in the world and worked with the greatest fighters in the world, and I've done pads for top fighters and worked on many, and been in movies, and there's 2 more in the pipeline. And, you know, I got sponsors. I just got a email today. I got to read it about a tequila company that wants me to be the brand ambassador. So I just read that. I'm working with a CBD company that I got to tell you about this because I think it's instrumental. It's
plug them too, so give the name.
Yeah, it's a CBD in it, but J. Tim contacted me, and I've gotten, you know, CBD companies contact me all the time, and I always ask them the same question: is what's your proof source? So J. Tim says that they created a cream for cuts for the healing process.
All right.
And they contacted me, and I asked, well, what proof source do you have? Well, that's why we contacted you.
Right.
So I was like, all right, well, look, I work the bare knuckle fights, and let's go. You take your stuff, and they sew them up in the dressing room because they all get cut. 75% of them get cut. So they sew them up in the dressing room. Jay will give them the cream, take a picture of them, and a week later they respond back with a picture, and the results have been tremendous. So I had like stem cell and CBD and vitamin E and collagen. So it's the Stitch Premium Cut Cream, and it's made at like I say, available at CBDinit.com. And so I'm using that now, like PFL, the Professional Fight League, Race
Yeah.
and all that. They've bought some for their fighters. So I'm going to talk to, of course, you know, the bare knuckle. Everybody should have that for their fighters, just for the healing process.
I got to tell you, Dr. Heather Linden over at UFC, she swears by the CBD. I mean, I think the CBD and weed thing is stupid. I think it should be legalized. Like, I know CBD is, but I think it just should all be legalized. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it because I understand the recovery properties.
Yeah, of course. You know, nature cannabis is at its finest. You know, you can't knock nature. It's been here a lot longer than us. You know,
That's true.
So now you talk about cannabis. Now I was thinking, here's how I could find out whether I should do this or not, and we'll do it on the John Bartolo show. So I got contacted by a cannabis company,
Right.
and they want to do a Stitch Premium line. And so my question to you and maybe to your listeners
Sure.
is it something that is ethical within our industry? Should I do it? Yes or no? But hold on now. So here's what I was thinking on the marketing aspect. If I do it, then maybe name some of the products or some of the strains off of combative names. 1 More Round, 8 Count.
Yeah.
So ask your listeners, have them feedback to you. What do you think about me doing a Stitch Premium cannabis line, and what about using combative names?
Well, make sure you leave comments down below. But I think that absolutely should be in something that comes into the fold. Now, the reason being, now people will say, "Oh, you're pro weed or whatever the fucking comments are, whatever." Here's the thing: there's real recovery properties. CBD, it's proven, it's been tested. There's real recovery properties, and I think for the marijuana, I know there's a case that's been made about microdosing and things like that. People have trouble sleeping. I'll never be an advocate of go out and get 14 prescriptions versus go and get something that's natural. So, I'm an advocate for recovery. I think that there's massive amounts of recovery. I think the whole thing of legalization, illegal, blah blah blah. I think that's all stupid. I think you have the federal government, you have the state government. The states are rapidly approving it across the board. I think the federal government should just step in, tax it, make it,
available. Make it available.
Make it available.
Yeah.
Now, the dosage is where sooner or later you become addicted to anything. So you can become addicted to sex. You can become addicted to any stimulant, anything, any up or any down or out there. There's plenty of legal stuff to get addicted to.
Sure.
Gambling, booze, women. There's plenty of stuff like that. But I think that there's a place for it. And I think that whether or not leagues want to say, we're going to test you for weed. Listen, you want to get in a ring high? You're going to have do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You're going to have real problems. I don't think that's the case. I think it's for recovery. And I don't think, guys, whether it's in basketball or anything, are ever going to be like, geez, I'm going to go out there and play, under the influence. I don't think that's going to be the case. So,
man, you know how many times when I was in Thailand, I would smoke a joint before I go train, and my stretching was tremendous. Your body just relaxed so much where you could stretch and all that. And I remember we went to a New Year's Eve party at our instructor's house, and he was Thai, right? So we're all there, all bummed out, and nothing going. He goes and brings us some joints.
Chilling.
So yeah, chilling. So nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, and listen, don't get me started to all the listeners that are the purists out there that you go back to even days of Mickey Mantle, and they talk about stimulants and they talk about antidepressants, things they take, beta blockers. So please spare me. I know enough about what went on back then, and guys, were doing plenty of other stuff that was available to them that they maybe thought were enhancers, but they're not. They're certainly not necessarily enhancers. But anyway, that's how I see it. But I think it's a good thing. I think they absolutely, product lines, coming out with your own product line is a natural thing. I think that's the progression of you.
Yeah, I think I've definitely created a brand. And a brand's been created of me. Like I say, I have top cards and have T-shirts and have books and they're doing a documentary, and
I think you keep paving that.
Yeah, I am. I am, and people ask me how long am I going to be a cut man per se. Well, that until the mechanics start dwindling. But I can still do the marketing. Yeah, the products. And
I'm 40. I'm ready for the coffin.
I'm just warming up, bro.
You're just warming up.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see where it goes from here for you, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Now you have Tyson Fury coming up. Let everybody know what you have coming up and what you got going on.
Yeah, well, I have Tyson Fury. I had done this last Saturday, my 29th show with Top Rank in the bubble because of this COVID. So they brought us in as house cutmen. But now I got a 3-week break. I think the 24th. 17th. I'll find out. I'm going to the Mayweather gym after this. Rolando is going to be fighting on the 17th, and they asked me to work with him. I gave him my prices, so I can go see if it's okay or if I have to renegotiate or what. But the 17th, and then Tyson Fury, of course, the 24th. And like I say, I'm close to being a consultant for an MMA movie. I think they're going to shoot that in Quebec, Canada.
Oh, nice.
And then from what I've heard through the things is Creed 3 might start like in November. So.
Yeah, I'm hoping the movie industry bounces back a little bit. I love streaming. I think there's a place for streaming. I think streaming's amazing. I was talking about that with even Lisa King when she was on, and some. But streaming is a great avenue for a lot of folks. It'd be great to see in a series too down the line. I love to see that.
I'm not even an actor. I don't want to be an actor. I can't dance. I can't sing. Well,
it's not acting when you're playing who you
when you play yourself, it's easy to do.
Exactly. Well, I'm pumped, and it's been an honor, and I love having you. Shout out all your sponsors. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Well, first of all is Cutman for Hire Supplies. They handle, Juan Ramirez handles my Stitch Premium Athletic Tape and my KO Swell. The KO Swell is the metal we use for the swelling, so he carries it. Plus, for Cutman and trainers, the only place to go for the best stuff. Of course, CBD in it with the cut cream, Stitch Premium Cut Cream. Right now, those are my only two. One More Round. One More Round was my apparel company during the UFC. People thought it was my company because I give that fighter one more round. So Mark Zucker is the one that makes my outfits for the Tyson Fury and Triller shows and all that.
And the best compliment you could give Stitch to everybody that listens is next time the Creed movie comes out, everywhere you see Creed, go comment and say it's only legit because Stitch is in it.
My man.
That's the best compliment you could give this man. I appreciate you, and I really appreciate you coming in. It's been a lot of fun and catching up and telling stories, and I know we could do this all day. We'll have to do it again.
Sure, anytime, man. I live 20 minutes from here, and, I love talking shop, and what better way to hang out with guys
just want to talk shit.
Yeah, like BJ Penn calls it talking story.
Yeah, talking story.
That's what we do, just talk stories. I'll go to the Mayweather gym now and kind of shoot the shit with the guys. Then go to City Boxing.
I love it. I'm jealous.
Yeah, Bones Adams gym. That's my life.
I love it.
And then I work on weekends.
Well, I appreciate it, and can't thank you enough. And I know we'll take a few pictures and we'll BS a little bit around here, but thank you for coming in.
Oh, no, thanks. Forgot to say about the book I wrote, too.
That book.
From the Fields to the Garden. That's available at Amazon.com. It's a great story. A lot of the stories that, these type of stories are in the book, and how I grew up as a farm worker and had followed my dream.
I'll make a deal with you. I'm going to buy a copy now,
all right,
but you got to come back in and sign it.
All right, done. And there's Creed 1. Here comes the boom. I did Here Comes the Boom also. So many damn. But from the Fields to the Garden 1 and 2. Because I finished the first one, and the people were asking for a second one. And like movies, I'm not big on sequels, but there continues. I still have stories. I'm
gonna do it now.
My man.
I'm doing it now.
All right. Well, call me back. You get it. You call me back. We'll do a show, and I'll sign it.
Done. I'm clicking buy. I'll buy both copies.
Yeah.
As long as you'll come back and sign them.
Sure.
See how this works, guys? Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone who listened to the show. And listen, everywhere podcasts are heard, you can listen to this show. And on YouTube and on the Warrior Poet Society Network. Please go subscribe over there. Love those guys. Go check out John Lovell's Warrior Poet Society Network. Use the code Bartolo and save on your subscription. I just ordered the book. I can't thank Stitch Duran enough for stopping in. His contribution to boxing is amazing, and the stories he has. And anybody out there, give him a follow, give him a listen, and go check out some of his stuff. I ordered the book. We'll get it all signed up. And thank all the sponsors. There's a complete list down below. Go to the website, www.johnbartoloshow.com. There's a complete list listed there. I want to thank a few of them now. Gallo Technologies, Rhino Metals, Volquartsen, Firearms, Inforce Weapon Lights, Pulsar Thermal Imaging Technology, and, of course, Kenzie's Optics and Right On Optics. Stitch, I can't thank you enough for coming in. I appreciate you.
Thanks, my man. Let's do it again.
Yeah, let's do it. We're out.